Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
He's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella's story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the big show. Josh McCallan here, radio show host. How about that, John? I'm trying to pretend like it's the DJ's days of the 80s, John Edwin.
Josh, you have a great voice. I'll tell you what, your podcasting voice is bar none. I try and, do all the things I can to catch up and sound as good as you, but buddy, you take the cake. I'm honored to host this show with you.
Well, that's why Garrett Miller was on the show today.
Yeah, Garrett Miller was so awesome.
Best.
Super creative guy. Finds ways to creatively finance many different types of deals. I mean, he runs through it on this episode, and I was blown away by how creative they really get.
Yeah, so this is Washington Square Capital. I think that's the WSC. Don't worry about that. This guy is Garrett Miller. He knows how to take and structure large projects and get the capital needed to make them happen. He's a superstar at that. If you're in the world of commercial real estate, this is going to blow your mind. You're going to want to call Garrett right after this. If you're just an investor seeking to understand better how large deals get together, we make him put his professor hat on. Professor Garrett Miller. He'll teach you about cap stacks, cap rates, pref equity, mezzanine, all the crazy stuff you hear when you're a private investor, direct investor, and you're like, wait a second, no one's ever explained it. Garrett does. So there's something here from the new person to the most experienced person, and I think Garrett's going to end up being a repeat guest on the show. John, you cannot believe it. It took me a while to get Garrett Miller on the show now. I can't wait to introduce him to our audience.
You know what I love, Josh? I love having friends that invite friends and say that they're going to be great interviews for our podcast. So our good friend Andrew Babson referred Garrett Miller. Garrett, I'm so excited to have you on. Can you give us a little background on who you are?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Garrett Miller. I run a firm called Washington Square Realty Capital. We're based in Center City, Philadelphia. We are a capital markets advisory firm working with real estate developers and investors to help them navigate the capital markets and to secure, capital across the stack and across the life cycle of a project, anywhere from land acquisition all the way through perm, bridge, construction, pref equity, mezz, with everything in between. So we're basically working with our clients, to help them bring these projects to fruition. And we're working on some, frankly, very cool stuff these days. So it's the market's coming back a little bit, which we're excited to see. It's been a little bit of a sleepy summer.
Yeah. You are working on great stuff. And, as far as you, though, if you wouldn't mind telling, I have professorial questions to ask you, Professor. But before we get into that, tell us a little more about Garrett. You're a father, you got a lovely family online. I get to see I'm connected to you, but what got you into this? Like, how did you get into
So my journey sort of goes back. So I'm born and raised Philadelphia kid. Went to LaSalle High School, and it's a Catholic prep school out in the suburbs. And I started rowing on Schuylkill River on Boathouse Row. Did that through high school, through college, and then actually took it all the way to the Olympics. So sort of long story short, I was fortunate enough to grow like 10 inches between my sophomore and junior year of high school. And that gave me the opportunity to sort of make my way onto the U.S. junior national team, and took that all the way to 3 world championships and a trip to the Olympics. So I was really excited.
Get out of here. I didn't know you were Olympian. That should be the name of your capital markets. Olympian Capital Markets.
Yeah. So I was at the Sydney Olympics, and it's actually what my middle daughter's name is Sydney because of that. So I'm happily retired now, but I do like to stay in shape. So I like to say I celebrity coach every once in a while. I get out on the launch and help the kids. I was down in winter training for pen rowing this past winter and hopped on the earth for a few minutes. It's like the old, I think there's an old boxing expression. It's like, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good once as I was. So, I can still do it a little bit. You get older, you get stronger, but you kind of lose a little bit of the engine. So I did that. And then I spent, after the Olympics, spent some time kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. went down to the Virgin Islands for a bit, hung out down there, got a job bartending. And I made my way up to New York, thinking I was going to endeavor on a career in investment banking. And I arrived there late summer of 2001, perfectly bad time, as you could imagine, for that. So I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And from my rowing days, I had a membership at the New York Athletic Club on Central Park South. So I was working out there one afternoon, and I met a guy who said, "Hey," we got to talking. He's like, "I work in real estate." It's honestly never crossed my mind to have anything related to real estate. And so he kind of took me under his wing and said, "Hey, come join me." He was at a firm called Insignia ESG, which did leasing in Midtown Manhattan, office leasing, which is probably the most competitive business you could possibly be in. It's awful. They are hyper competitive. They don't stab you in the back, they stab you in the chest while smiling and looking you in the eye. And that firm became CB Richard Ellis. I did that for about almost 5 years, and happily moved on in 2006 and endeavored on a career in real estate development for about 5 years, and actually got involved in some very cool assets in Philadelphia. I was a part of a group that acquired the Curtis Center at 6th and Walnut, Public Ledger Building at 6th and Chestnut Street, amongst other assets we had in the Philadelphia region. But those are the two kind of anchor ones, which is located right next to Washington Square, the park, which is why we're called Washington Square Realty Capital, because that's where I started out. And so ended up doing that for 5 years, and we're doing all these transactions, and it was great. And you're looking at nothing against developers, but I have this kind of joke that says, the biggest misconception about developers is they actually make money. I'm sitting there putting all this money in, all this capital, and I'm signing all these guarantees and taking all this risk. And these, capital advisors, these commercial mortgage brokers are making all the money. And so I say, after 5 years of this, after the '08 crash, I was like, I'm going to pivot. And I really enjoyed the capital market side of the business. And because, for one, if you're a developer, you have to be so focused on one singular deal. For, Josh, as you know, you're focused on one thing day in and day out for years. And, I really enjoyed the challenge of working on all kinds of different, deals all the time. So there's all kinds of stuff coming across our desk. At any given time, we're working on anywhere from half a dozen to probably 15 or more capital raising assignments. And, they kind of cover the gamut across the country.
Hey guys, it's John Vroman, founder of Front Row Dads, and you're listening to Capital Hacking, the best investment you'll make today.
Currently, we're working on stuff in Atlantic City, converting a former casino into a family entertainment venue. We're working on a huge project actually in Fayetteville, Georgia, at a town called Trilith, where we're working on building about a 300-unit multifamily project that we're working to finance. And very cool place. 8 years ago was nothing but wheat fields. I believe you were once there, Josh.
I've been there.
Yes, you have an appreciation for it. And so right at the entrance, we're actually working on a project there to build multifamily and student housing on behalf of the family that owns that site. So it's a very, very cool project. And that's just sort of the type of thing that we're working on, where, what's been great about our firm and what we've been able to do. So one of our most well-known transactions was 400 North Broad Street conversion, which used to be the Philadelphia Inquirer building, and now it's Philadelphia Public Services building, or better known as the Philadelphia Police and Fire Department headquarters. That was a project that we took from day one, where it was just an idea in somebody's mind. It was a meeting between a general contractor and a representative from the city of Philadelphia when they were looking for a new police headquarters. At the time, they had pursued that building at 48th and Market Street in West Philadelphia, which, as the new mayoral administration rolled over from Nutter to Kenny, the police never really wanted to be over there. They wanted to stay in Center City by the courts. And so this opportunity came around to convert a 535,000 square foot building into an incredibly technologically advanced headquarters for the police. And we were involved in over $300 million worth of financing on that project, as well as effectively really acting as a development advisor to the owner, and really oversaw the entire project. We negotiated the lease with the city, negotiated the contract for the construction with the general contractor, and really had a great experience. Learned an absolute ton, which is what we're able to translate to projects like the one we're doing at Trilith, where it's more than just like, go get me some money. We take on a far more intricate role. A lot of times when we see a deal, even the deal at Trilla, I'll give you a few examples, but we financed a project you probably know as the Hilton at Penn's Landing. It used to be a Hyatt. Now it's the Hilton right in Philadelphia on the Delaware waterfront.
Yes.
And we'll get these projects where there's a capital need, and the project's been around. Like it's not like, oh, it's a new financing request and we get it de novo. In this case, for example, it had been out, they had rolled over a couple of bridge loans, and the owner was pretty frustrated that they weren't able to come up with a solution that was a little more permanent. And that was a situation where we went in there and looked at the project. And a lot of times we'll look at a request and they'll say, well, why is this stuck in the mud? And we'll have to figure out, I always say we have to identify the problem and come up with a solution before we can even engage the markets. So we want to figure out what's the issue? Why is this project not getting done? Because we sort of go into every project and ask really a few questions. Is this a good project? Does it make sense? And, is it financeable? And if the answer to those questions are yes, does it deserve to be financed, and everything else kind of makes sense, we sort of ask ourselves, well, why is it not getting done? What are we missing? Sometimes we get in there and maybe we'll see what the banks, the underwriters are saying, and the cash flow is not what we thought it was. Other cases, it's just somebody's really not being creative as they approach the capital markets, so they're pitching the story wrong. So a lot of times it's our job is to really craft the story in a way that's accessible and understandable. I always like to say to my team here that it doesn't matter if it's a $1 million request or a $100 million request or even larger. If that request does not fit on one side of one page, it's not getting done because it'll never get anybody's attention at these lenders. They are overrun with deal flow. And if your deal can't be sold in a matter of 2 minutes, if it's not understandable right there, they're going to move on to the next one because there's more deal flow than there is available capital. So they have the pick of the crowd.
So let's do a lesson, Professor. You always say it. If you don't get your attention in half a page, I don't care if it's $100 million or $1 billion project, you ain't getting any traction. All right. So what do you do, magician, to get lenders' attention in half a page? What does that mean to you? What do you have to say on that half page?
So we're always going to start with the executive summary, which is going to be literally the 3 or 4 sentence summary of what is this thing. If it takes more than that to describe it, it doesn't matter what it is, it's not going to get done. So if it's foreign or abroad, this is a conversion of the former Philadelphia Inquirer building of a 535,000 square foot building into the Philadelphia Police Headquarters. The tenant will be the city of Philadelphia. The owner is going to convert the building, and the cost is $300 million. And here's what our financing request is, and here is why X, Y, and Z. Real succinct, why you, Mr. Lender, should do this deal and why you should look at it. So we may reference, we'll pull out the strengths of the deal. So in that case, we were backed by the city of Philadelphia's investment grade credit. So that was the strength that we really leaned into on that deal.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. We're working on a transaction right now. We're trying to convert a former casino in Atlantic City into an a non-casino, non-gaming entertainment complex. And we were approached to try and come up with a way. So New Jersey has a new tax credit program called the Aspire tax credits, which you may or may not be aware of. It's a pretty amazing program where, depending on your location, you can get between 50 and 85% of the cost of the project back in tax credits that are then payable out over typically a 10-year period, but in the case of Atlantic City, Trenton, and Patterson, over 5 years. So the challenge, of course, every developer does the same exact thing. And this is getting into what's the problem with the deal. So I'll give you a couple transactions in Jersey that we're looking at and why some are getting done and others are not. So there's a project that we're working on right now in Newark, New Jersey. It's 247 units of ground up multifamily. And they've been working on this project for 2 years. And I have a good relationship with a construction lender who is providing $110 million of construction financing. Now, the project has been officially awarded a $90 million Aspire credit. So you're sitting there going, wow, this is really valuable. Now, the challenge is the $90 million credit is not $90 million. You have to take 85 cents of that because there's a market. People will buy the credit for 85 cents on the dollar to effectively lower their tax bill by 15%. So they pay 85 cents, they get $1 credit against their taxes, they pocket 15 cents. And the challenge is when that credit is payable out over 10 years, you have to bridge it because that money needs to go in effectively up front as equity. So you have 2 years of construction followed by 10 years of payback.
Professor, this is one of the most mysterious parts of mid-scale development that I actually would love for you to teach. So let's just say it was a $90 million sticker price. It's like the lotto. You don't get all 90 million bucks.
Yes.
So how do you get money, and how much of the 90 do you get up?
So we're working on a solution to bridge that. And when you discount it back, 85 cents on the dollar is 76.5 million. But then you have to bring that forward for 10 years of the payout plus 2 years of construction.
And a lender gets involved.
Exactly. So we're bringing in
A buyer wants it, but you go get a broker.
But the buyer wants it in 3, 4, 5, 10 years out.
Right.
So they're not really interested in getting involved today. They want to get involved when they can use it. So we're bringing a lender. So the challenge is that 90 becomes right now about 35. So we're coming up with a structure to make that 35 more like 42, 43, which will get the deal done.
And to break it down mathematically, you're saying that's crazy. At first, it sounds unbelievable.
It sounds like, I had this $90 million. I got all this free money. This deal's amazing. And what happens is the developers will come in and they'll plug $90 million in their pro forma. I'm like, there is no $90 million. There's 35. And that's where and
the reason it's 35 is because 75 is the sellable price, but you have to finance it. So take 75 million,
the present,
put an interest reserve loan on it over years.
It's like a discounted present value. So effectively, think of it: if somebody wants to pay 10% a year,
I get it.
You have to look at it. If it's a 10% a year, you have 2 years of effectively where it's accruing at 10%, and then it amortizes down on a 10-year schedule.
So the same buyer will buy it. The people that need it over the course of 10 years will buy it today at 35 cents on the dollar.
No, that's the trick. They won't buy it. So you have to get a lender to lend it to the guys who will then buy it. So
that's amazing. And is there a monthly payment?
And so we structured it where the whole thing is built within the credits. That money goes in. They effectively reserve during the 2 years of construction. And then as the payments come in, it's like a principal and interest payment. But here's the trick. So again, with the solve problems, we have the project we're working on Atlantic City has been awarded a $400 million, or is the process, I should say, of being awarded a $400 million buyer credit. Now, the advantage of Atlantic City over other markets here is that credit is paid out over 5 payments instead of 10. So you get the first 20% upon completion, and then 12, 24, 36, 48 months, the rest pays out. The challenge is on a deal like that is when you have this huge number, the deal is really depending. Atlantic City effectively, for all intents and purposes, unless you're like some massive corporation issuing bonds, there really isn't financing available.
Okay.
There are no lenders. I mean, you call them up and you mention where it is, you kind of talk around it and you say, well, where is it? So, it's Atlantic City. And then they hang up on you. So it's, we need to kind of craft a solution to bring the cost of capital down, because somebody will say, oh, well, yeah, I'll lend you in Atlantic City, but the cost is 18%. Well, if I'm discounting at 18%, that 400 becomes like 100 real quick. And I need to keep it at like 300 plus. So what we've done is really looked at it and said, well, if we look all the way through the spyglass here, at the end of the tunnel lies the state of New Jersey, who says we will buy back these credits at 85 cents the dollar if you cannot find a buyer. So we have effectively worked with the lender and made the argument, and they have so far accepted it, and we're pleased with that the state of New Jersey's investment grade single A rating is standing there behind this thing. And so that this should be viewed as an investment grade security. And so an investment grade security in the state of New Jersey for, New Jersey bonds will trade about 175 over the 5 years. So you're looking at like debt at like 5.5%. Now, this is something that's not pure balance sheet, general obligation bonds by the state of New Jersey, but our pitch is, look, at the end of the rainbow, the state of New Jersey is standing there behind this thing and they're investment grade. So just tell us what the spread is for that little bit of legislative risk that the state could change this, which we don't ever think they would, because once those bonds are out there, they're rated. It would destroy New Jersey's credit rating if they change this. So we're able to price something that would normally be like 15, 18%, and we're getting quotes at like 8%.
See, now you know why we asked Garrett to be on the show, John, but we have to also ratchet it down so we can take it in bite-sized pieces, because that's some pretty sophisticated stuff, isn't it, John?
It is. And a question that comes to my mind is, Garrett, on these loans, you mentioned the first one at 90 million for 10 years. Are you staying with them for that 10 years, and then the Atlantic City deal, 400 million for 5 years, or are you getting out earlier?
Well, so we're just providing the advisory services. We're effectively arranging the transaction as a broker. So
You're not providing the capital.
we're not the capital provider. We're going out and structuring a deal and sourcing the capital for them. So that's the trick for us. The thing I like about our business model, as opposed to being a developer or a lender, is I get paid at the closing table and my risk is done. It's over for me. I'm not sitting there signing the guarantees, writing checks, and waiting a long time to get.
Yeah, you make being a broker sound so attractive. We should all just, but it's not that easy.
Great. When it's not great, it's not great.
Yeah, and
That sounds like you're incredibly creative in that position.
Well, that's what I enjoy about it. Like I said in the beginning, I like working on multiple transactions. Like right now, we've got about 20 deals in our pipeline that we're working on. Everyone has a unique little thing. I mean, nobody hires us for the straight down the middle fairway shot. It's because you're in the rough and you're stuck and you can't figure out where to go. That's why we're getting
Right. Otherwise, we'd get traditional.
It's easy. I mean, if you have a banking relationship, it's like you're going to call up your local banker. But it's when the banker says no, it's like, okay, well, where do I go from there? And that's really what happens a lot of times. So, like I said, we get in here, and it's really trying to understand the deal. Is the deal being presented wrong? Is the structure of what they're asking for wrong? A lot of times the ask is just wrong. For example, like what we just talked about with those two transactions with the Aspire program. It's just the ask was wrong. People were just plugging it in, going, "Oh, I'm going to get $90 million." No, you're not. But here's how you can get money.
now what's funny, Garrett? They're not getting 90 million unless they capitalized it with cash and then gave back those tax return savings to the investors that put the equity up. Then it would be dollar for dollar over time, correct?
So, well, yeah, and then that's actually Netflix was awarded a huge Aspire for their movie studio project in Monmouth County, and that's exactly how they did it. But
They're just going to do cash.
yeah. So if you're a big enough corporation, and exactly right, you just bridge it yourself, and then you're getting the full value of it. But if you're so they work with the entrepreneurial developers. That's the difference.
Think about us though, Garrett, because with accountable equity, our investors put up a lot of capital to buy these projects. We're highly rich and we go in low leverage, high capital. In a sense, couldn't there be a pro forma where you show them return of capital comes through both cash plus tax? I've seen that once in a deal I looked at in Colorado where they were passing back all the tax savings. Actually, no, it was a New York abundance guy. And he was telling me his tax credit deals, let's say it was $500,000, he would raise $1 million, and then 500,000 of his buying down their capital was going to come in the tax savings. Then the other 500 he owed them. And I was like, man, that's really interesting. So that's basically like what Amazon's doing, right? They're buying the deal in cash, let's say.
Hi, this is Melanie McCallan. Josh and I are just so grateful for the many investors who have already joined us at Accountable Equity. Accountable Equity is so much more than a capital group. It's really a community of accredited investors that want to learn and grow together. I just want to personally invite you, if you want to find out more about this type of investment and see if it's right for you and your family, please visit us at accountableequity.com.
Hey, it's Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. Enjoy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of developers. We have one client in particular. He was able to structure where he passed the depreciation through as a part of the investor's return on the asset. So, I believe you do that as well.
Oh yeah, we do, but we don't account for it. We don't account for it, sadly. But I mean, you get that on top of the IRR. But let's go back now, Professor. You threw out 5 key vocabulary words that all of us direct investors, private investors, business owners, a lot of the listeners, and you said it so smoothly. And we say it sometimes too, but you're a professor. So when was it when you at that first deal at CBRE, the company that becomes CRE, where you started to really understand these terms: capital markets, capital stack, pref equity or preferred equity, and mezz debt? When did it become concrete and can use your example in life and say, that's what they mean by the cap stack? Yeah. And how do you use it?
Well, capital markets is just a general reference for effectively anybody who's selling money is what we look at it. So if it's in real estate finance, it would include banks, credit unions. It would include balance sheet, private lenders, IFCOs, hedge funds.
What's a LifeCo? Sorry, I'm just curious because as I've come to learn all these things, Gary, I realize we say these words, but I'm curious. They're interesting.
a life insurance company. So life insurance companies, as you can imagine, they're a great type of lender for real estate because they're trying to match assets and liabilities long dated out. So if they're trying, it's very difficult in commercial mortgage space to go beyond 5 or 10 year mortgages unless you go to a life co. In those cases, you could do 20, 25, 30, 35 year self-liquidating loans.
And I imagine they have very small buy boxes, as they say, right? Because they probably aren't looking at anything other than what, like Class A downtown. What are they looking for in the life co companies?
The Class A and Class A properties. The life companies are not getting real creative down and dirty. That's where
I wouldn't have thought
our bridge lenders come in. So the bridge lenders, like we also have a capital stack. So capital stack is, think of it like if you have a tall glass that you need to fill up with water, and you have to fill that entire glass up to make the project work. So the first thing that gets poured in is equity. So that's effectively the risk capital that is put in by the developer and their sort of like, I'll call it the friends and family investors. Behind that, you'll have typically, like if you have more of an institutional type equity partner, they would come in behind that because they're typically going to sit in a sort of a senior equity position or a preferred equity position. Right now, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, I'm really interested in getting a joint venture equity partner, I'll always say two things. One, I don't even think they still exist anymore because they've all converted into preferred equity, which we'll define that in a second. But more importantly, it almost never makes sense. And once we lay out all the problems, and we actually have a client who is going through this right now, where they've been working with an institutional equity partner on a ground up multifamily project to bring them in. The institutional equity partners look at it themselves as the 800-pound gorilla. They're putting up all the capital from their perspective. They effectively want to dump all the risk on you, take all the upside, take all the fees. And it's like, what are you left with? And why am I doing this deal? At the end, that's sort of what we always say. So, what we always end up getting to is when we look at the capital stack is, okay, so in a traditional capital stack, in capital stacks can get as crazy as you can imagine. It really is up to your imagination and what people are willing to do. But, for us, it's always keep it as simple as possible. Everybody tries to overcomplicate real estate in our
and you like to see that equity portion, both the you call it the GP round, or that at least 10% probably usually, then the preferred equity, which is sometimes institutional or secondary types of equity at risk, but with controls. You need that these days. What do you need to see that at as a ratio of the 100%?
So as we're filling up our glass here, as we said, the equity is probably 10%. So that would be 90% leverage. And then you would see the pref equity might go from 80 to that 90 or 95, or maybe 75 to 90, 95, depending on the asset class. And then effectively everything beyond that, the last thing you're pouring into the glass is the debt. So what we end up when we look at these things, we'll go to somebody who says, okay, well, I've designed this project, and it depends on the asset class you're looking at. But for example, our project in Trilip, going back to that one that we talked about. So we have a very substantive, and I mean very wealthy client who has effectively been building this entire little mini city by writing checks out of his checking account. I mean, that's the kind of person who can do this. Now, that's great in the beginning, but after 8 years of that, people get tired of it and they say, okay, there's got to be another way. I don't want to be writing checks for these things. So what we do is we're going in there and looking at it and saying, okay, instead of you putting in equity and bringing in pref equity and mezz and then a construction loan, why don't we just do what we like to just simply call a stretch senior construction loan, which is a construction loan that, and this is what we get really good at, is working with a singular lender who will go in and effectively finance 80, 85, 90. We've gone as high as 98% of the cost.
It's because you probably already own the land free and clear and have entitlements. And in a way that has some equity value, right?
Absolutely. So you're effectively contributing the land. And by doing that, we're able to go out and effectively get the entirety of the cost taken care of. So, we did a deal in Utah where the purchased the land like in the mid 90s for nothing, a few $100,000, but obviously everything grew up around it. And so that land was then worth $20-some million. And we were able to basically, I think the developer put in $500,000 and we financed 90 out of 99.
To build a multifamily?
Multifamily, yeah.
And I mean, so you've done a great job. Where's mezzanine fit in? And how do lenders look at mezzanine debt? What is it?
So mezzanine debt and preferred equity is really two sides of the same coin.
Got it.
It's just how it's really just legally how the money comes into the deal. So a mezzanine loan, when you always sort of say, well, we always talk about we're getting into more terminology, but a single purpose entity or single purpose vehicle, SPE or SPV, will be the 100% owner of a building, we'll say. And so that borrowing entity is where the mortgage goes into. That's where the senior construction loan goes into. That entity is then actually owned by probably two more entities. There'll be a GP or managing member of that. And then that entity then is owned 100% by another entity who owns 99%. So it kind of like, you make this triangle that goes up. That upper entity is where the pref equity or the mezz goes into. So if it's preferred equity, it just means the money is coming in effectively, via the operating agreement. You're effectively redrafting, amending your you're amending your operating agreement, and effectively you have terms laid out that says, okay, I, Mr. Institutional Investor, I'm coming in, and these are my rights. I get an 8% preferred return before you get an 8% preferred return. And once I get my 8, then you get an 8 on your capital account. Or let's say your capital account is worth $1 million, which is made up of $200,000 cash you put in and $800,000 because you created value via some say entitlement.
Right.
And so you have a capital account, and then you get your 8% or $80,000 per year, accruing during the term until payments can be made. And then it's like, effectively, in that case, it would be like return of the preferred payment is paid off, and then return of capital. And then you enter into a waterfall where, okay, let's say it was 90-10, but once they're paid off, then the developer gets 20% of the profit up until everybody gets a 10 or 12. And then once everybody gets 12, then the developer gets 30% until everybody gets a 15. And then above 15, the developer gets a 40% of the profit. So that's what we've
really, you know what? That leads us to the principle of deal flow creates expertise. I mean, and depth of understanding. One person going out and doing deals, even if they're really the smartest people in the world, only see their deals. And how many deals can they do in a year? 5 large $100 million deals? Very few a year. But you're looking at 20 right now, compounded by 15 years, by 20 years. So you've really seen a heck of a lot of structure.
Hey everybody, it's Robert Helms, host of the Real Estate Guys radio program. And when you're not listening to our show, make sure you're tuned to Capital Hacking. You're going to dig it.
Of hundreds. And so, yeah, that's where the sort of the creativity comes from in terms of how to understand this stuff. So, yeah. And just to finish it off, so we talk about the pref equity. So mezzanine debt, which actually is now debt, is coming into that upper tier entity effectively as a loan, and the security is a pledge of the equity, right? Secured by a UCC. And so effectively, if there is a default, effectively what the lender, the mezzanine lender, can do is foreclose on your ownership position and take over that entity. So that's sort of the nuance.
And that's where it gets pretty interesting in commercial real estate. This is I want to, before I let you go, the world has been through a few cycles since 08. Actually, you were talking about 01 was the investment banking crash of the .com is what you were talking about at the beginning. That was the boom.
I was doing development in 08, so I lived through it.
Yeah. So we all know what happened. We don't all know, but what is going on in capital markets, and use your crystal ball, because, I've been on the wrong side of capital markets during the post-COVID era with our types of assets.
So, right now, the biggest challenge that we see is just, and I think everybody experiences this, is just nothing pencils. No deal. When you look at it, right up front, it doesn't pencil. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense at face value. So you have to look at something differently. Or, we're seeing deals that are still in the hangover phase. So, in the post-COVID world, say 2021, 2022, we were literally I think we did 35 construction loans both of those years. It's just the volume of what we were doing was insane. And it was formulaic for everybody. Every developer was able to be successful. Every developer looked like a genius because effectively you would buy it, you would borrow it at the time it was LIBOR. So it was LIBOR plus 300. So you're borrowing it 3.09% was your construction loan. You could then go get perm financing at 3.5 to maybe 4%. I had clients that were livid when we got them loans at 3.78. I'm getting screwed. I'm like, you should be thanking me right now, compared to where the world went to after that. And so it was really easy when it was okay, well, I build to a 6 unlevered return. In fact, the unlevered return is just if the cost of the project is $10 million, the unlevered return is 6%, means that the cash flow is $600,000. So 600,000 divided by 10 million equals 6%. So that's when we say what unlevered return. You can also call it a cap rate, a capitalization rate. And so it was easy. So I would build to a 6 and I could sell it a 4.5 or a 5, and you look like a genius. And you would just turn that over and over and over again. Well, that was fine. It was fine to build to a 6, but what happens when the 6 that you can sell at, you exit, is not a 4, now it's an 8. Now you're underwater. Now the bank's coming calling and saying, that loan we gave you of $8.5 million on the $10 million of cost. Well, the property is only worth 7, and we want you to pay us down to 5. And then you get these, and that's where all these deals went upside down. And we're still recovering from that. We also had, depending on the market, Philadelphia is a perfect example where, it's when a politician will insert themselves into the market, either knowingly or unknowingly. Philadelphia from 1997 to start with adaptive reuse project, they amended in 2001 with the Philadelphia's 10-year tax payment, where all the taxes on improvements were fully abated for the full 10-year period, which, if you look at that, is incredibly powerful. It really drove the Philadelphia market and created the renaissance for Center City, Philadelphia, and the entire city itself. And of course, the politicians are going, oh, well, what's in it for us? Well, what's in it for you is after 10 years, you get in perpetuity real estate taxes forever. But that wasn't good enough, so they had to change it. So they said in 2000, at the end of 2021, they changed the legislation and made it a step down. So the first year, instead of being 100% every year abated, it was 100, then 90, 80, 70. So every year your tax bill went up 10% until it was fully taxed at the end of 10 years. But if you had gotten your building permit before the end of 2021, by December 31, 2021, you could maintain that abatement. So what happened? You effectively took every developer went out there, rushing out their building permit, and effectively you took 10 or 15 years worth of development and front-loaded it into 21, 22, into 23. And that's why we see in parts of Philadelphia right now, Kensington, Fishtown, Port Richmond, especially up in that market along the riverfront there. I mean, we're seeing 3 months of free rent across the board with anybody on lease up, 2 to 3 months on renewals across the board. Imagine if you're giving 3 months is 25% of your rent for a year. It's a fact that's 25. So that's 25% of your revenue after expenses. That translates into like 40% of your NOI is zapped. It's gone. And so that's why these deals are struggling, because the cash flow that they thought would be there isn't there, because effectively there was just this tsunami of supply. Now that will eventually get absorbed, but it's going to take some time. Well, the city is still, I think, growing, and it's going to work through that. But again, it just makes these deals more challenging. We're working on a few things right now, and every lender has a story of, I did a loan up there in 2022 and I'm stuck in it. I can't, I the lender, and basically working with them and kicking the can down the road, but we know we're underwater. We know our loan isn't worth what the property's not worth what our loan is. And so that's the challenge that we see today.
Yeah, but
everything's over leveraged right now.
Yeah. So, we dug in deep on Philly. So the next time we get you back, we're going to broaden the perspective, because our listeners are all over. John and I love Philly, and we know exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of a surprise. I came back to Philly here 18 years ago, and all of a sudden, my memory of Philly is not this Philly of today. It's really was built up by all those tax programs, but you're saying they all had a crashing halt here recently because of the tax change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to my original statement, which the biggest misconception is developers make money.
Yeah. John, thank you, buddy.
Garrett, thank you so much for all the knowledge, wisdom. I mean, you are the fixer. You're like the wolf.
He's the fixer.
He's the fixer. He is the fixer.
I'm going to take that and start using it. So wearing a tuxedo, just like in full.
That's right. It's like the fiction wolf. That's right. The wolf is on his way. Where can our listeners follow up with questions, or if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. Well, our company website for Washington Square Realty Capital is simple. It's www.wsqcap.com. My email address is GM, as in Garrett Miller, m@wsqcap.com. And feel free to call our office, 267-546-9024. We'd love to talk to you.
Great idea. And we'll have to get you at one of the big conferences in New Jersey. There's a lot of other investors that would love to talk to you down there and learn from maybe how you could look at their deals. Thank you so much, Garrett.
Appreciate it, everyone. Thank you for your time, buddy. Have a good day, guys.
Bam! Straight! We just got
buddy.
We got to the end of another great show, and everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity, because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.